Vanessa, if there was ever a topic that excites me more, it is getting in the head of these people who create these big scandals,
Oh my
specifically
gosh.
a political scandal.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to talk with you about the topic of Andrew Cuomo. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to speak with you as well about this strange
Yeah,
man.
And what about this? Oh, I love that you called a strange man. Now, I am dating myself right away because it's not like I'm talking about someone who's ripped from the headlines right now. Most people on social media, younger people, probably have never even heard of the guy, maybe from the pandemic, certainly. But you have 2 episodes dedicated to the rise and fall of a very one-time popular governor who I think is almost the archetype of the typical celebrity scandal. So I think he fits in
Right.
perfectly. So I'm excited to talk to you. But before we do that, just a little quick snippet. Tell me about your career, what you're doing now, and why do people like me already love your work?
So I have been a glossy magazine writer for, many, many years. I started at New York Magazine, then I was at Vanity Fair and Rolling Stone, and very well known for big cover stories on Britney Spears or Katy Perry. I spent like 4 days with Taylor Swift when she was 19 years old. I just got crazy access to a lot of people. I wrote the first Lady Gaga story that anybody ever wrote that she did completely in character, her Lady Gaga character. And just like sort of have a reputation for being early on a lot of, figures that will become big later on, like calling that, and also getting a lot of access and spending a lot of time with people. And I love scandals.
Well, yeah. And you love,
Yeah.
well, speaking of scandals, we won't go too deep in this because I already know there's like 7 podcasts I could do with you on this topic. But Katy Perry, when everything happened with Russell Brand 3 weeks ago, did that not surprise you?
Okay, so Katy Perry, I actually went to her house in Los Feliz that she lived in with Russell Brand back when I covered her for Rolling Stone. And I remember so vividly, like she, was really into like the cute Japanese culture. And she went, like in the middle of the interview, she left and she went and she put on like a little baby kimono and these like fluffy Japanese slippers that were like little cats or something. And, the thing about Katy Perry is like she's very a young soul in a lot of ways, right? Like she's got a lot of like verve to her. And then we went up to Russell Brand's like, home office, basically his lair. And it was so like old man. It was so like really like sumptuous couches and like man desk and stuff. And he was out of town. I just remember thinking to myself, wow, this is really weird. Because these two people are so different, Like, he's a comedian, but he's not really a comedian. And she is like, a cute little girl in a lot of ways who just is extremely smart, right? And like has her finger on the pulse of culture. But
also naive, would you say? That she could fall for someone like a Russell Brand?
Yeah, I don't know if she's like naive as much as she's sort of still this like 15-year-old girl who was brought up like Christian and like, used to go to farmers markets with her parents and sort of like play music there, I think, or whatever. They were like not wealthy Christian like preachers, basically, her parents that just were rolling around in California. And she essentially used that like youngness of her like real self to dominate, musical culture. Whereas he seems to have used this like masculine energy to like get increasingly, unpleasant and like put this like conspiracy theory sort of evilness into the world, at least from my perspective.
Oh, interesting. So when you were in his lair and you watched the video of Russell Brand in his new, well, it wasn't his lair, it was, wherever studio he was, backdrop, it all came together and made sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I very much felt like, oh, this is the guy. I mean, it looked like when I see him talking a lot of times, it does actually sort of look like this room that I saw. I thought he did a relatively good job, actually, from a PR perspective with handling that.
In his videos?
I think first of all, I think he's going to go to prison. Like, I think this is extremely serious. But I would be curious to ask you, because I felt like from a PR perspective, it wasn't that bad. He came out before the articles came out. He got his little fans all excited about how this could potentially be a conspiracy. I didn't love from his perspective, he maybe shouldn't have gone and done those shows that he did, because then there were like all these photos of him in sunglasses looking very besieged. But the initial like response, I've really started to think that people should respond and say, I believe I'm innocent of the charges if they're going to fight them that way. Because saying nothing is worse.
It's worse. And Vanessa, it's interesting. So I just gave a talk a couple days ago, and I added Russell Brand to the keynote, because the rule book that he's following, or the playbook that he's following, is one that worked for a long, long, long time. And that is where you deny what was said about you. You deny the allegations, you diminish the allegations, and then you want to get through it, and then you rebuild to whatever it is that you're doing. And that worked for a lot of people, but it's difficult now in a social media environment because there's so much evidence, against you. But with Russell Brand, you're absolutely right. He did a lot of strategic moves. His timing, and even in the timing of dropping his second video, it was almost to the second. It was late enough that it missed all the feeds. So no one could cover it on Friday, because he knew in a couple of days they were doing more interviews. So yeah, from a PR perspective, he's doing all the right things. But as a human, what he did, he shouldn't get away with it.
No, and I don't think he will. And I think that's the thing is like a lot of people, when they're caught in these problems, they think to themselves, like, how do I save my career? And it's like, dude, you have a much more serious problem. But, the wheels of justice are slow, and this is going to go on for a few years like this. Who even knows? Sometimes juries don't decide, or maybe there's a plea, or who knows. But like it's so fascinating. Like, the human brain cannot take in that much like punishment, so like first people concerned about their image, and then they start reckoning with like, oh my God, I might actually really have a serious legal problem. I mean, it sort of happens like that often, but I just think like again, I'm not like saying this is good. I think like these stories look very credible to me. I don't think this is like a Me Too situation where it's like being pieced together by some journalist that's trying to like just make a deadline. This looks real. But I will say that like he is going to get the benefit of timing, which is like nobody cares about these stories anymore. People are just sick of them. They don't want to hear them. And you know what? They're not that surprised by this with Russell Brand. They're like, what? So Russell Brand is like, doing this kind of misconduct? Like, I mean, like people who wrote off Russell Brand already wrote off Russell Brand, right? Like as a Joe Rogan-ish dude who's just out for attention and clicks, and the faux, sort of the faux wellness angle mixed with like this real need to like just dominate, a media space. So I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating to think like, what would happen if Harvey Weinstein came out? Like, if that stuff came out today, like what would happen? I think he still would be in trouble, but it wouldn't be the way it was.
Would have been a different defense. And you're absolutely right. And it's, you and I were talking this before the recording about how just our knowledge of just life and experience and watching news cycles and understanding how they work. If Me Too happened now, it would be an entirely, because Me Too was also like a Twitter dominated type of cycle that everyone was in. But it's also based on the charges itself. Like if you take a Lizzo and a Russell Brand, they're using the exact same playbook for response.
Right.
But I don't think Lizzo's was appropriate because hers was workplace harassment, which I think her lawyers could have fixed for her and she could have reemerged. Whereas
she
Russell
made a big
Brand,
mistake. Yeah, she definitely made a mistake. That was not the right way to deal with it, because she has such a clean image. unlike
Yes.
Russell Brand, and so much
Right.
goodwill that
Yeah.
she, by responding, she actually created more certainty in the women's stories. Like, oh, this is real. Whereas if she didn't respond, people would have been like, oh, maybe they're making it all up. Like, I don't know. You know,
Exactly.
she hasn't even responded. But the deeper, I mean, the fascinating thing now that Twitter is essentially imploding is to think about how the news cycles will shift. Because, I mean, certainly if Elon Musk puts a subscription on Twitter, like that is a subscription fee. That is the end of Twitter. But even right now, part of why people stopped responding, I think, for a while, is if you responded, there were these really, really smart writers and journalists on Twitter that would take apart your response, explain exactly how it was BS, make fun of it, create some meme about it that could potentially take off and be viral. And then you could really do yourself damage, right? Like, you almost didn't see that happen with Russell Brand. Like, you didn't see a pile-on where people, like, sort of dissected his, you know, responses and blah, 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 and make it way, way worse for him, you know?
Well, I did, but it's just me. But you're saying journalists, you know, I mean, that's just
like
what I do. But
the hive mind of Twitter
hive mind,
that can really just lock into somebody, you know?
well, also though, I think because what you're touching on and what you and I are saying about Russell Brand is the PR strategy was good. It was, I don't want to call it brilliant, but it was good. In other words, he's placing a lot of emphasis on strategy right now in terms of reputation. And also with Twitter, like or X, he's sending out the signal to his followers, to his supporters, which a lot of them are on Twitter. You know, that's where a lot of them are. And that type of, when you get into misogyny, social media, where there's profit for clicks and profit for content, it can support you, just like Johnny Depp in the trial. It is a whole new subculture of how you can use public relations, like of just the machinations of how you can work your way through it. So I think Russell Brand, I think you and I would agree, as far as playbooks go, he's writing one right now that is probably based a lot off of Donald Trump, and it works. It just doesn't help him legally, though.
It doesn't help him legally. And but the thing is that, like, that old thing where criminal defense attorneys used to say, you know, to people who were hiring them, you cannot say anything because if you say something, the judge won't like it and it could affect people and blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, I don't want you to say anything to anybody until this trial is wrapped or the plea is done. It doesn't really work anymore because juries go online. And if they don't see your perspective and what you have to say, or at least your surrogates, you are in, like, potentially in trouble, you know? Like, every criminal defense attorney you talk to is like, 100% of these stories are being told, like, don't go online, and 100% of the people are going online and, like, reading up about it. So if they see a NXIVM, like, barrage of, like, sex cult, worst person alive, blah, 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 with no response...
Yes. Okay. Then, okay.
You know?
So that's just the other strategic angle to it is you're putting the content, you're putting the information, you're putting the narrative out there now when there is an eventual court case. Can you think of a case now? Cause I mean, you've been covering people for years and you've been in this like celebrity realm, political celebrity realm. Can you think of a case, before TikTok, before Twitter, where a lawyer going hard on the defense, don't say anything, we're going to cover it. You know, we're going to cover everything down and diminish it. And they got through it, even though you knew they were guilty.
Oh my God.
Where the strategy actually worked. I know, I don't like it either when people ask me to pull things from the back of my brain.
I'm like, I don't know.
I know, it's so hard.
Did Casey Peterson say anything? She might not have said anything.
Wait, Casey Peterson?
I mean, Casey, the one with her daughter in the trunk.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Lacey.
Lacey.
No, wait. We're conflating everyone.
I'm conflating Scott Peterson.
Scott Peterson. Scott Peterson's wife was Lacey, and their son Connor, and then there's Casey Anthony.
Anthony. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I want to say she didn't say anything. I don't think
she didn't say anything.
And she got off.
Did you? You're right.
Almost, I mean, in just my opinion, but she's most likely guilty.
Yes, but there are people out there though who think now that she's innocent. Yeah. Well, people who are thinking that now. So with, I think, wasn't there a Netflix show with it?
There was.
Or something? Yeah. Okay.
I think somebody's making another one. Yeah. I mean, look, I could be wrong. I mean, I think, well, like how about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard? I mean, how do you think the media affected that? I'm not that close to that story. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, well, I just sat down for an interview with Vice. They're doing a series on the 9 lives of celebrities, like celebrities.
Oh, I did this too. That's so funny.
It.
I did.
We're
Paris
in the
Hilton.
same.
We're in it together.
Oh my goodness! Yes,
I love it.
Oh my gosh!
So you did Johnny Depp then?
I did Johnny Depp.
Okay, that's really funny.
I did. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I did Johnny Depp. I did Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh my God, I did Howard Stern.
Yeah.
And I did Hulk Hogan. And then they had Paris. And
I did Paris, and they asked me about if I could talk about Howard Stern, and I was like, dude, I do not know anything about Howard Stern. Like, I can't do this. Oh my gosh,
can you believe this? Oh, this is hysterical.
That's really funny.
So then, all right, so if you did, okay, I'll tell you what I said about Johnny, but tell me about Paris Hilton. So tell me about her, or was your angle how she got through it?
I mean, again, because I did all this access reporting, I spent a night with Paris, not a night in Paris, but like a night with Paris. I had one of the greatest like Rolling Stone experiences ever.
Tell me.
This was like seriously 2 weeks before the sex tape came out. And I was assigned a story on her by Rolling Stone. It might have actually been my idea. And it was sort of off the simple life. It was just like a 2 or 3 page story. And so the publicist says, meet her at Koi. You guys are going to meet for dinner. This is where you go, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, great. And as I'm going there, the publicist calls and is like, hey, can you, I know this is a little weird, but Paris doesn't have a car. Can you drive Paris home? And I was like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can definitely drive Paris home. Like,
wow.
No problem. So, I get to the restaurant. It's like her and Nikki Hilton, and remember Casey Johnson, who was Tila Tequila's girlfriend for a little while, who's the Johnson and Johnson heir.
Oh yes,
died and
yes. Oh my goodness.
So we're like having dinner, and then they're like, "We're going to a club. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Sure." And they're like, "Okay." Like Paris gets in my car, and we were out till like 6 a.m. We actually got our purses stolen together. Like, I was like, wow, we're really bonded. Like, I drove her back and it was light outside.
Oh my gosh. I'd be so tired even thinking of that.
Anyway, so that's, yes. So basically for Paris's career is fascinating, right? Because she was Kim before Kim. Mm-hmm. Kim definitely learned from her.
From Paris.
Kim was her closet stylist. Uh-huh. But then she sort of went into this weird, like, dead zone, right? Like, where she was, like, big in Japan, but not, like, big here. And Kim sort of stole her thunder.
Yeah.
And, she's got something obviously weird going on with her mom and this need to be seen as, like, a perfect little girl. Like, there's almost, like, that John Bonet thing happening, like a high-end John Bonet kind of thing. And then, I hate to say this because I think Paris is actually really cool and really smart.
Yeah.
But she did get married to somebody who was like, you are a business. Like, you're a business and it's not going right. And I'm going to like get this in shape. And like, I don't want to put down Paris and say she's not part of it, but certainly like having a partner, look, there are a lot of couples like that, right? Where there's like one person who's helping the strategy of the other person. She's completely turned it around in the last 2 years. I thought her documentary was incredible, where she really showed who she was. And like, now she's being really smart and strategic. And she put out this book and she doesn't tell her whole story in the book. She just tells a little part, you know?
like a fishing expedition
smart.
to get people in. Yeah, and she's more vulnerable now. Like she's giving people insight into her early years and how she. Yeah, that's interesting because when they gave me the list of names, because some clearly like they had some big blow up and then they survived it, but I thought, oh yeah, Paris Hilton wasn't so much like a PR disaster. She was just such a fascinating person. And even remember the jail, like you remember they were like filming the helicopters above her. I think people felt sorry for her.
I know, but the only part about this whole like renovation of people's images that I sort of hate is like also Paris was like the #1 mean girl in Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
Like she's very well known for like a very cutting, like nasty sort of sense of humor, putting people down, like, you know, like almost like a drag queen sort of camp. But it's, you know, it's a little bit like, oh my God, I do feel bad for her. Like she did go through horrible things, but let's also like not
the comeuppance,
not too many tears. For,
right.
Like, when like she was also dancing on like a table and the world was taking pictures of her and she was making like little nasty remarks and having the time of her life. Like that was fun.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting.
Like,
yeah.
It's like
a
mix. We don't say like the people at Studio 54 were traumatized and that's why they were dancing. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, come on.
I totally get that. Yeah. So she was like a Regina George, like a mean girl. But
100%.
it's almost like she lost control again, like of her narrative, like with the arrest and everything. That's when you could tell they were just kind of winging it. Like the Hilton brand was spiraling out of control and they couldn't contain it anymore. Oh my God, that's so interesting. Yeah. So I feel the same way, you know, when we talked about Johnny Depp. Now here we're breaking open their show before it even starts or comes out. But like Johnny Depp had years of fandom behind him and like 2 cycles of it. He had 80s 21 Jump Street Johnny Depp and he was the bad boy. He, you know, Viper Room, River Phoenix. Yeah. But then, you know, now he's a Disney guy and he's not a Disney villain. You know, he's kind of this, you know, swarthy, but, you know, happy-go-lucky Jack Sparrow where he gets all these younger people. So when a trial happens, you know, with an Amber Heard whose career it pales compared to Johnny Depp. So just from a fan perspective, she didn't have that goodwill support, but also, like I said, the monetization of misogyny and people talking about Johnny Depp and what Amber Heard's doing to him. It was a messy marriage that fell apart. That's just like anyone else's marriage, but because it was celebrities, we all saw it in real time. But Amber Heard had so many things going against her. And Johnny Depp knew that. And it played it to his advantage. You know, his legal team, I think, did that for him.
Yeah, it's interesting because Amber Heard, you know, sort of looks similar to Paris Hilton, but somehow she's like, Amber Heard is too perfect. She's too cold, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and so, yeah, I think that's basically what they use. Just like, this is a messy marriage like anybody else's, and she's trying to make it way more than that, and it's just not. And I think, like, honestly, like, it's something like the Gwyneth Ski trial, which on my podcast, Infamous, we just did the trial, which was unbelievable because the audio from the trial and the video for the trial, as we all know, because we watched it for an entire week, is like gold. Like, it really is like an iconic trial that she was part of.
Wait,
so, like,
wait, that didn't come out yet.
It did. Okay. Yeah, it came out, I think it came out in August.
Oh, in August? Oh, you already did it. Okay.
If you go to like Infamous,
I have to listen.
You know, it's got a picture of a woman with a hand in front of her face. That feed has like tons and tons of stories. And if you just scroll back.
Who is she supposed to be, by the way? Who is this woman supposed to be? She's supposed to be based off of someone.
I mean, you know, I think it's supposed to be like a Britney, Paris, like Lindsay sort of idea.
I like it.
Yeah. I mean, but basically, like, Gwyneth has to have known going into that trial that she was going to win. And I bet you that Johnny Depp knew that too.
Yes.
Like, these people are so smart about their public images, like, that they don't take that step. That's a very radical step of putting yourself in that place of vulnerability, and they're not going to do it.
They're not going to do it. But I do
know?
think one of the elements, though, with celebrity, whether it's Johnny Depp or Gwyneth Paltrow, because I was watching the whole Gwyneth experience happen, because what I was noticing from my perspective is what she did just before the trial. How she created, that was the bone broth podcast interview moment. And where her brilliance, in my mind, is making Goop like quirky people talk about like, oh my God, this is crazy. But she's strategic crazy. She's smart like a fox on that, because it gets people talking about Goop. So everybody was talking about that. And so, yes, like going into that trial, anyone could go in after seeing his legal team and seeing him that she was going to win it. But what celebrities don't have is a true sense and confidence on the control of what's going to happen when it's with the masses. We don't know what's going to go viral, who's going to uncover something that's going to spin it off into another direction. Yeah. So there's that one element of fear that they do have. And with that Gwyneth trial was that fascinating.
It was totally fascinating. Yeah, I think that I think celebrities are more afraid now than they've ever been. Like, even though they're physically a lot safer, because there's a lot less paparazzi, and there's like, I know that people have stalkers and all of that for sure, who do like, public events, but like they do feel like there aren't those car chases, right? The way there were for like Britney Spears but at the same time, and they think they can control everything through their social media, but they can't. And it's very disturbing to them, and there was a system before that I was sort of a part of, but I was always like a little bit the fly in the ointment, where it was like, okay, if you want to get on the cover of Rolling Stone, you've got to spend 3 days with Vanessa. You've got to take her on tour with you. You've got to take her to your house, like blah, 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 blah. And in return, she might like be a little bitchy, but she's basically going to return you like a really interesting biography of yourself. Right. And then there were different like magazines where, like everybody knew if you were on the cover of Rolling Stone, on the cover of Vanity Fair, you were going to get like a total blowjob, right? If you were cover on the Rolling Stone, they really wanted you to say a couple crazy things, but, it was going to be nice. New York Magazine was probably going to be pretty bitchy, like everybody sort of knew the deal. And with the diminishment of any access journalism, because a lot of people, like, I don't think Beyonce has given an interview in like 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah, I just talked about that yesterday. Yes. Yes.
Like, there's no real, like, institutionalized journalism going on for a lot of celebrities, and they're pretty psyched about that, right? Because they didn't really want to do all this press to begin with. But the sort of devil's bargain is that they have less protection in terms of like crazy memes taking off, somebody using their image now in AI, making something weird, fake happen, and that going viral. The virality thing is, would you rather have like a journalist who, sort of is somebody who does this for a living and is going to portray you in an interesting way, be the person that you give access to? Or would you rather have like the entire internet chiming in about some like picture of you with cellulite? Like, it's like,
right,
it's not even a contest, right? So
yes,
I think, it's complex, because at the same time, like, I really roll my eyes when people are like, when celebrities are like, everybody's being so mean to me. And it's like, grow up. Like, this is the bargain. You get fame and money. And in return, people get to leave mean comments on your Instagram page. Like, fucking grow up,
Yes.
But they're like, they're twisted. Their minds are all twisted. So...
Okay, so this podcast has totally changed now. Okay, we're totally changed. So
Okay,
this is my edit point. No, this is my edit point. I just am marking it down because this is a whole new podcast. This is this is interesting. So I'm going to do this edit point. We're going to jump back in because this is the topic I want to talk about. So let's do because I just did this interview yesterday with someone. It was their Vulture podcast with Vulture, New Yorker, and we were talking about this very topic. So let's start off again, and let's do a then and now, because you have experience with people. Like, you know what it was like to cover someone back then and how they don't have the same coverage now. So I'm going to jump back in about Rolling Stone. Okay. So who did you profile in Rolling Stone? Was it just Katy Perry?
Let me look. Meanwhile, I also have to say, you need to come on my podcast to talk about Meghan Markle at some point.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I always turn down the royal podcast because they always just want to destroy her in a mean, horrible way. It's like, no, I don't want to get into that. If you want to talk like critically, I'll talk about it. But you definitely, I would do that in a heartbeat.
No, I mean, this is what like my take is going to be.
Okay, hold on. Can I?
Okay,
hold on. Can we go on? Okay.
We'll talk about it later. Yeah.
No, we have to touch it. We have to touch it now.
I did. I interviewed a lot of people, like Usher. Who else?
Throw some names out. Like, who were you interviewing? Obviously, pre-TikTok, even pre-Twitter. When you're working for a glossy, and there's a relationship there. I mean, it is a collaboration between you and their team. Who were some of the names, like you said, Paris Hilton? Who are some of the other names that you spent time with when you were writing their stories?
I mean, I did a massive story on Justin Bieber when he was 16.
16?
That I got in a lot of trouble for.
Why?
Oh my God, it was so crazy. I was obsessed with Justin Bieber in a way that was like, I think people felt bad for me. Like, people didn't understand. Like my friends would come over and I'd be like, can you see this boy in like his video? He's so cute. I can't like deal with it. He's so adorable. And so they were like, okay, who's going to write about Justin Bieber for Rolling Stone? And I was like, I am writing this. Yeah. And so I got, they said, come down to Atlanta, you'll hang out with him. He's going to take you ice skating. And I was like, oh my God, Justin Bieber is taking me ice skating.
Do you ice skate, Vanessa?
Well, I mean, terribly. And so I was like, what will I wear? And I spent so much time like planning my outfit, packed my outfit, took it down to Atlanta, like went to the hotel, ironed my outfit. And all the time I'm like thinking to myself, like, I don't know how I'm going to actually ice skate. Like, how am I going to ice skate with this person? And, then they were like, yeah, okay, like, he's going to pick you up, like, outside, the hotel. I'm like waiting. It's like 2 hours late, I'm like standing there. And like, finally this like enormous SUV pulls up to the corner, door opens, and I was like, oh my God, this is a child. He was like 5'2" at this time. He had like braces on. And I was like, hi. And he's like, hey, what's up? And I was like, oh yeah, it's like great to meet you. Like, I'm really excited to go like ice skating. He was like, we're not going ice skating. That's so corny. And I was like, okay. But I was just like, I can't believe. Like, he kept talking. I think he had Invisalign. And he kept on being like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. And I was like, this was not the Justin
what you
Bieber.
expected. Exactly. So you had a much different Justin Bieber, and then all of a sudden became like a child with a braces orthodontia problem. You're like, what am I doing here?
So it was so crazy.
So you were in Atlanta. Were you in a skating outfit? Like what?
No. I mean, I just had like a nice skirt on, and like I had like an A-line skirt, But then I can't even remember. We did like a million things together. And we went to like Dave and Buster's, and then they were, cause for Rolling Stone, again, we would get this sick access. So we're like done in Atlanta, and they're like, see you in LA in 3 days. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to LA.
Okay.
So, I go to LA to meet up with him, and he's got like a whole tour. He's on the Tonight Show. He's on this, he's on that. Stuff with him and Selena is starting to break. Like, are they going out or not?
Yeah.
I'm like sitting with him in a car. He's got like his screensaver is Selena. I'm like, obviously he's with Selena,
okay.
And so, but we haven't had a sit down yet, right? Like, we've just been hanging. Because the whole thing with Rolling Stone is like, let's play pool, let's hang out, let's vibe. right?
Yeah.
I'll be in the studio. I'll listen to him sing a lot, talk to his voice coach. Everybody was very concerned about like the voice was changing, like what was going to happen with the voice.
Yeah.
And so, so I go to LA and like hanging out with his like bodyguard downstairs in the Four Seasons, like, bar.
Was there a parent? Was his dad in any?
His mom was there.
His mom was
there.
Okay.
But they like canceled it or something. I can't remember. I had to come back again. And I was like sort of pissed because I'm like, TikTok, it's Rolling Stone, right?
Right.
Like, you don't wait, you know? And so they usher me up to his room. And the publicist is like, all right, you're going to do the sit down. Check you later. And she leaves. And they had been so on me, like hanging on me while I'm like playing pool. And then they're like, cool, you're doing the sit down. We're out. And I was like, who does that? This is where the questions are going to be asked,
What power
so
moves.
They left. And so I was like, so this is what I got in trouble for. So basically, I thought, this is a guy who has control of like a large amount of the young female population, right? So I should ask him some real questions. So I said, like, what is your opinion on abortion? What is your opinion on abortion with like incest involved? Because he was like, killing a baby, it's wrong. And I was like, okay, well, what about in the cases of like incest or something? And so he gave a good answer. He was like, I'm not really sure, sort of answer. I have to think about that more. But we had like, I asked him some political questions. Like we had just basically like a little like, let's have a real chat and see what's going on in your brain.
Vanessa, can I ask you a question? Can I just ask you a question right now? So you're with a 16-year-old and
that's what
right. You're in Dave and Buster's. You're doing all this other stuff.
Right.
So I get like now in a journalist's mind, so you have Justin Bieber and you recognize how much power and influence this kid has. I'm curious. Yeah. And what you got in trouble for. Right. But what was the outcome you were after with those types of questions with Justin Bieber?
Well, I think at that time I was trying to everybody was trying to understand like how Christian he was.
Okay.
Which did become a thing later on, right? Mm-hmm. And where this kid was at in terms of his real beliefs about women and society and family and what exactly was going on, because they had remade him from a little Christian singer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Into this massive like pop sex symbol superstar.
Right.
So, that was what I was trying to get to. Now, basically the question is like, was it inappropriate to ask those questions? Because he was almost 17. But like, was it inappropriate because he was 16? And so I don't know. I mean, now I have a daughter who's 11 and I can't even imagine in 5 years asking her those questions, right? Even if she was a star like Justin Bieber. At the same time, Justin Bieber is a product that's being sold. And I think, we've crossed over as a country where people's political beliefs are important. Like, it is important to know because they're going to speak out on them, you know? And so it was sort of important to know who he was, really, apart from, like, the product, right?
From the product. Okay, so Justin Bieber then to Justin Bieber now with Hailey, Baldwin Bieber. What do you see when you see Justin Bieber now? And you were in the car at a Dave and Buster's with a kid. What do you see when you see him now?
I mean, I'm sort of impressed, first of all, that he's still here, right? Like the idea that he is a teen idol that was able to cross over into having an adult career. Remember, like that was really not the way it happened before, like he was supposed to be on the ash pile of history. I think obviously it's interesting given the recent news that he's not going to work with Scooter Braun anymore. I mean, what I hear through the grapevine is Hailey Bieber's real smart. She also comes from a celebrity family, right? Where she grew up really understanding how this all works. And she maybe like Paris Hilton's husband, is very invested in the business of Justin Bieber. And so when you talk to Justin now, you're talking to the two of them, and they're figuring out what the best way to play everything is together. So it seems to me like he's doing pretty well. You know, like, do I think his music's going to sell forever? I don't know about that. Like, do I like the music he's putting out? Not really. Like, I only like those early songs.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Clearly. Yeah, you were.
Clearly.
It's a different time. But,
Yeah.
you know, and it is interesting that Haley, you know, she doesn't come from Alec. She comes from Steven, who in terms of the hierarchy, you know, the Baldwin hierarchy, you know, he had, you know, his moments like The Usual Suspects, but he was not the premier. So you see like a Haley growing up almost strategically thinking, okay, what is my play here? I mean, even her career has been remarkable. And now just the influencing brand that she has. So now have you interviewed Britney Spears?
No, I haven't interviewed Britney Spears, but I wrote the very famous Britney Spears cover where she's in black and white and it says like an American tragedy on it. Which was basically based on me like spending 2 months with all the people who were covering her when she had her breakdown.
When she had a breakdown. So what do you think's happening now?
This is actually the story I'm like best known for. So basically, so the story that I wrote was you know, about all the paparazzi and the whole like industry of covering Britney Spears, and also the way that she was part of it, right? Like that she, you know, would do these crazy car chases, like that I went on. Like I went and put my body in like in danger. I was like, if I die on a Britney Spears car chase, like I really am humiliated.
I mean,
you know?
do not put that in the obituary,
but,
right?
Yeah. You know, so I was up close and personal with her a lot, and she was, you know, playful in the way that you see her now with the paparazzi, right? Like, don't forget, remember, she started dating one of them and they ran off to Mexico. So like, it wasn't as simple as it's been portrayed now, where she was the victim. Certainly they were the aggressors, right? But there was a very complex, weird thing going on that was obviously related to mental illness. And the judge at that time was talking about drug use, you know? So I have gone through like a really interesting journey with that whole story where, you know, this is a story that's like taught in journalism school. Like it's a really weird, interesting story. There's a very famous journalism story called Frank Sinatra Has a Cold. And it's a writer an older writer who just observes Frank Sinatra and never interviews him. This is a very similar story about Britney Spears. But people thought it was too harsh on Britney. And in the time of her documentaries and Free Britney and everything like that, I became like, not a huge villain, but like every once in a while people would be like, what is this?
Yeah, you're
like,
part of the problem for
And
Britney.
it was written in a way that was supposed to be very like provocative and like William Burroughs-ish, and there's a lot of language in there that I maybe wouldn't stand behind today, but all that being said, I was like, how is this happening? That like everybody's on this bandwagon of Britney is totally fine and the media is at fault. And her father, look, she always had this horrible relationship with her father. So I definitely think something happened there with the conservatorship that was not kosher. But I think you can see from her videos today that this is not a person who is well. Period.
Yeah. I think everyone's in agreement on that, correct? Do you think?
I mean, they weren't a year ago.
Well, I just read about her mother, and I don't know if this was tabloid. I don't know if I saw it in TMZ or New York Times. I have no idea. Clearly not New York Times, but that she is back at work. Like she's working. Just like she's either, I don't know what her profession is. Maybe you remember. I don't know if she's a nurse or whatever, or a teacher maybe. But they don't have that. Financial funnel coming in anymore. But it seemed like it was such a dysfunctional family. Like the marriage was dysfunctional. The dad, before he was a bad father, he was a bad husband. And there's just dysfunction in that family. But it's interesting to see a Justin Bieber, a Britney Spears, and like a Justin Timberlake. to see how their career.
I've interviewed him too.
Of course
I've
you
also
did.
interviewed him.
So tell me the difference between now Justin now.
Okay, Justin Timberlake, I have to say, so Justin Timberlake was the most normal person I've ever interviewed, and that really was.
Whoa, wait a minute. You mean across the board?
Really normal, but also it was like a really weird moment. He came and he picked me up at my house, and I was like, "I'll just meet you at the restaurant." They were like, "He's going to pick you up at your house." I was like, "Okay, that's."
Are you in
dope.
New York or LA?
No, this was in LA.
Okay.
And he came in some car that's way too fancy for me even to know the name of it. And
okay.
We went to a museum.
Well, what circa is this? What circa is this? Is he solo at this point? Is he over 21?
He's definitely over 21.
Okay, all right.
This is when he was, let me see when it was exactly.
Was he married?
No, he wasn't married.
Okay.
And he, basically what had happened, it's called A Free Man in LA, and it's 2011. And he's 30 years old, and he had just done Friends with Benefits. And so he was in a breakup with Jessica Biel, and he was so depressed and so bummed out about this breakup, and basically couldn't. When you interview somebody and you're like, this is not a real person. When you're talking to Justin Timberlake, he was like a real person. Where he was
personally,
I
don't
even
know
answer
that.
your questions because I'm so bummed about my breakup right now that can we just sit here and have some, we went to a hole in the wall Thai place. He was just almost crying. And I was like, this is not great copy, but I really like you. You're so nice. And I feel for you. I mean,
Vanessa. So this was for Vanity Fair, and oh my God, the cover photo on that. Oh my gosh, amazing. So the timestamp on this, he was dating Jessica Biel, but they broke up. Did it seem like she broke up with him?
I think it seemed like she broke up with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think, this is a skeptic in me, right? You're the journalist, I'm the PR person. Do you think he was doing that on purpose to make you feel sympathy for him? So the story would go? Okay.
I mean, well, I think the thing is Justin Timberlake knows he's a heartthrob, right? So he knows sort of being oh, I'm so sensitive and my girlfriend has dumped me is going to play really well.
Yeah.
But he also I think it's really interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine about Angelina Jolie the other day, and he's
I was just going to ask about
So
Brad
I've never
Angelina.
interviewed her, but he's interviewed her 3 or 4 times. And he said she always comes in with a story. She's she's figured out a story that she knows you'll like. She knows what she's going to reveal, and she's going to give you this prepackaged idea, and it's going to be really well told, and you can base your piece around it. And Justin Timberlake definitely was not doing that. He was just sort of maudlin and I actually feel like Justin Timberlake, what exactly is the beef about it? He said the Nipplegate, and then a couple of things he said about Britney Spears. The guy has been around
people kind of
forever.
turning? Yeah, but you mean
exactly.
the people turning on him?
The idea that sorry about that. The idea that people are turning on Justin Timberlake and he's a horrible person. It's you could barely find anything. This guy's been around for 25 years in the public eye. He'd have a lot more dirt if he was really a bad guy,
Yeah. Well, I think, if you think back to Nipplegate when that happened, and you would know better than me the year. I don't remember.
I think it's
the
late
Super Bowl.
90s or something.
Late 90s. To me, that was one of the first times I remember an example where people felt that Janet Jackson was victimized, that it was all a big setup, and she ended up being the victim because she was the one who took all the hit from that, the public hit. And, but then it swung around and came back on Justin Timberlake. And I feel like that was the first time I saw that kind of swing happen. And it makes me think in my mind, where were we in the culture wise? I think we were kind of just in the Twitter world. back then, right? Like, or maybe, no, early
No,
90s?
we were not into
Oh, we weren't even on social media.
I mean,
we
I
weren't
think
even
it was
on
late
social media.
90s or early 2000s. No.
Okay.
It was a
We had no social.
not social. It was,
Yeah,
I mean, I think
legacy
it's just
media.
like, whatever. He ripped her thing off. Like, he was never going to get out of that. Like, he did it, but they planned it. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
yes, exactly.
It wasn't
That's
like
right.
he just did it,
Yeah, it was television and the FCC
I'm not saying
fines.
that's like the greatest thing that they did. Like, that was sort of stupid. But I'm just saying, like, from my perspective, he's a nice, normal guy. He doesn't deserve to be like, have this weird, flack thrown at him.
Yeah. Okay. So then if we have to, so then we could wrap here, which I don't even want to, but I mean, just for the sake of time, I know. But now like all those celebrities, singers, artists in that realm. So we're 90s, they're younger. They're all still relevant today, which is incredible, at different levels in their career. What's the through line with them that what they all share, the commonality that maybe speaks to their relevance, but where do they veer off? Like, why is Justin and Britney Spears is Britney? Is there anything beyond just the mental illness portion of it and the challenges? But is there something about just looking at those three, the Justins and Britney?
The two, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, or like Justin and Britney. Like you've done so many interviews with child artist stars that are so relevant today or not, or even you're talking about Paris Hilton. Is there something that they have that gives them that staying power that they can go from an age before social media even existed? They're teen mags, but now they're still here and they haven't gone off the rails.
Okay, on a like public level, I think it's like, how much can they continue to tap into that nostalgia, right? Like, how much can they continue to have people interested in like your story I was watching you since you were a kid, and you've developed this way, and I find it really interesting, right? Like, it's so little about the actual music. It's all about the personality and like the ways you're twisting it and blah, blah, blah. But on a personal level, I mean, I think that like all of these people, there's like 4 key people around them, right? Like the manager, the mom or the dad, the childhood best friend, and like the record label guy or something like that. And it's a question of how strong those people are. And like, if they start manipulating you, which was the case with Britney, right? Like, she got really manipulated when she was young. And how much those people want your money. What were the deals like that you made when you were young? Taylor Swift, both of Taylor Swift's parents were well-off, educated people who, she might not have gotten the masters and blah, 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 but she was pretty well set up, when she was young. So that entourage, I think, like, is a key factor in what will happen to you later.
Interesting.
And Britney's entourage, and particularly like her parents, were very difficult. Like, it was a very difficult relationship, with the sister, But also, like, Britney just has some really bad genetics in her family,
Oh, that's so interesting. Can we just end on Taylor Swift then?
Yes.
Did you ever interview Taylor Swift?
I did interview Taylor Swift. I mean, I'm thinking about doing something about Taylor Swift, because it's like, I cannot believe that she just gets bigger and bigger and bigger with every passing day.
What is it? Like, what is it, Vanessa? And you more than anyone can figure this out. What is it about Taylor Swift?
I don't know. I mean, her music is genuinely pretty good. Like, people actually really like it. But what is it, I mean, the thing is like, she always was just so good as tapping into the 19-year-old part of each person. Like, that's where she is. But I also think she is incredibly strategic. I'm not sure any of these relationships she's had are real relationships. I have no idea which one is real, which one is not real. I don't know I don't know what her sexual identity is. Like, I don't think we know any of that. Like, her strategic brain and the way that she's been able to keep the music at a really high level and also the like image at a high level is sort of shocking,
I'm with you the same way, but what you've touched on to is that entourage piece. and her parents having, because the father, he has experience like in the music
He was
industry,
like a banker.
right?
No, I think he was a banker.
Or he just has money. He just has
experience
money.
with money. Yeah.
And knows people. Maybe that's what I read. So I think it's a mix of that theory, though, because you've seen it firsthand, is the people who you surround yourself with are going to set you up for that type of success. And Taylor Swift, probably had that very sheltered, protected, but also strategic parenting, an entourage. But I'm like you. I think her magic comes into knowing when and where to tap into what she needs to tap into that will create it around her. And where I think her genius is she's very predictive. Like she's the one who can figure out what's coming next, or she knows she has so much power, she's just going to create it. She knows how to create those types of moments because she wields so much influence. It's incredible. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, she's just like the ultimate sort of like pretty girl in the back of the class that nobody paid attention to, who then like was able to observe everything and then
who was paying attention,
real self. I mean, I was in her childhood bedroom when she was 19, when she was already a huge star. She was on tour. I went to her house and I was in her childhood bedroom, and it was like any 19-year-old's bedroom. It was a
Wait, you're telling me there's not like strings on the wall where she's already planning her life, like a murder wall, like she's already has her eggs.
It was like all
Easter eggs.
I mean, I'm vaguely remembering
the red scarf.
Like, she was writing all her little Valentines to the people in her class.
Oh, wow.
She showed me all the letters she and her friends had written to each other, and she was like keeping them in a box, and like she just was. She was like a prodigy who was also brought up like a normal girl, right? Like
okay.
her parents tried to give her, they moved to Nashville. Remember?
Nashville, yeah.
Because they thought she was so talented, but they also wanted her to have a normal high school experience and try to like give her a normal life. So she wasn't like flying all over the place and couldn't really go to school. So she was like a prodigy. She was no different than like a prodigy who plays violin or something like that, where she had this voice, but they also tried to give her, like, I really think her parents were just like solid.
They spotted
people,
it early. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So
did you know
they weren't, Justin Bieber, remember, like, he was living in a project. His mother didn't have money for like food, that's where a lot of these kids who become stars come from. Like they come from that sense of survival, and so.
To compare the two, like Justin Bieber, who, with the parents and how he grew up, and he's the YouTube kid, right? Like he sparks on YouTube, but Taylor Swift and her parents, plot while supporting her in a very safe environment. Did you, when you were in her bedroom or you were interviewing Taylor Swift, did you see any of this? Like, did you know she was going to have lasting power? And did you know that she would have this type of lasting power, that she would be who she is right now?
I thought she was like sick, very, very talented. And I remember when I was at her house, I think it was her mom was talking about like, how could she preserve all her costumes? Like, should they try to put them in storage or should they save them? And, it was like not even for sure that they were going to do any of that, right? Like, and they were thinking about if they should do it. And I think that, it was clear to me, like, yes, you should definitely do this. You should definitely make sure you have like a storage that has everything she's ever worn, because one day there'll be like a museum show of like Taylor Swift's concert outfits at like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something like that. But I didn't know that it was going to be like 2023. Right?
Eras Tour type of Taylor Swift. Here's my theory now. You've helped me develop a theory here, Vanessa. I think, because I get asked constantly about Taylor Swift on social media, about the dating. And I'm with you. I think every person she dates is an opportunity. And I think she may like them, like they may work for her, like this Travis Kelce. I think they're having fun, whatever, but it's all PR. I think everything she does. But I bet, and she gets all this credit. I'm actually writing an article right now for Forbes.com about, just her strategic mind. But what's enlightening, I think it comes from the parents. I think her parents were strategic. Like what you're sharing right now is they knew they were plotting, they plotted to go to, that's a big deal to go to Nashville. And they saw it. So they maybe imprinted this idea of how to be strategic in the long run. Yeah. And that's why she is who she is today. Let's give it to the parents, because we all know as parents, we have so much to do with kids, how they do it nowadays.
Exactly. That's
At least that's the theory I'm going with. Oh my gosh, Vanessa, I will just have to say this will be episode 1 in our series of deconstructing celebrities. Okay.
You and I are going to go on tour. Like, who wants to hear us? Like, no, but I am seriously interested. You and I should really seriously talk, because I am super interested in this question of like how to, figure out how to put our voices in that, like the voices of the people who actually know the stuff, in the whole conversation of
and have watched it.
All this,
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly far more from an inside view, but mine is like from the outside consumer view. Like I've been watching it with the same level of, of intrigue that you have, but you had that insider access. But it is, I find that's what I love. I love the timelines. I love the continuum. I love to see what makes someone successful, what makes this person more vulnerable to a PR crisis, the mindset of like a Joe Jonas, for instance, and his team. Yeah. Oh, before we go, can I ask you quickly on that one? Like, were you following that?
I don't know that much about, I'm not following it.
Did you ever interview him?
Interviewed them. No, I haven't.
Oh, he didn't do it for you?
I missed it. I missed it. I was like gone from Rolling Stone once they when the Jonas Brothers started like getting big. I was like, okay, I'm out.
You were a Bieber.
Yeah, I was a Bieber era person.
I love it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, awesome.
Vanessa.
If you can like try to put a link to my podcast someplace, I would so appreciate it. Like anywhere.
It is so I will 100% do it, but I have to thank you for joining me. And you know what? As someone who is supposed to be in control of an interview with a topic that I researched, that I wanted to talk about with this Andrew Cuomo, but you just tapped it. You dropped in. You're just you know what? You're just strategic, like Justin Bieber and Timberlake, and Angelina Jolie. You came in with your story, and then we went off. I fell victim to it. But you and I, because we're in this similar generation, we've seen a lot of things. I'm fascinated by when I see someone now, how did they become that person? And when someone spirals out, why did they spiral? What happened? Is it ego? Is it narcissism? Is it just bad parenting? Is it bad entourage? Whatever it is. I found this fascinating.
It's fascinating to watch people over time. I agree. Because you realize like, oh my God, that person is still here. There's so much talk about how we don't live in a monoculture anymore. And you're like, well, we do. There's a very few people, like 200 to 300 people who everybody still really knows, and that will change for a younger generation for sure. But right now, Kim Kardashian is probably the most famous person alive right now in America, in the Western world, or at least in the US, right?
Really?
I sort of think so.
Who would be number 2? Like, I see your argument there. I see it.
Beast.
Well, yeah, but if you go to a 64-year-old and say, do you know who Mr. Beast is? No, but they'll know who Kim Kardashian is. I mean, that speaks to your argument there. Oh, wow. Yeah, culture is fascinating, isn't it? Oh my gosh.
Really
all right, Vanessa, you have to come back and speak with me again. And then you and I will speak offline, because we could put together one heck of a panel, right?
It would be really funny. Yeah,
oh my
it would
gosh.
be really good. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, because I think there's like there's a space here that like is able to be like colonized. And I am really interested in the TikTok like podcast connection. Like, is it possible to get them to cross over? Is it not? Like, it's super interesting.
Well, in terms of, because the topics that you talk about, are people going to listen to a podcast? But I think it is.
Can you direct people from your TikTok to your podcast, or is it two separate listeners?
Well, that's the mistake that I made, is because all the work that I did prior to this was teaching CEOs about social media, how they need to understand it, right? That was my space. And I got into the heads of all of them and why they didn't want to do it and what they were worried about and why they, coming out with a response. Like, why won't you say anything? Well, because they're worried about being taken out of context because of social media. So that's what I tapped into. But then when I looked at the celebrity and culture, what I notice is that's what everyone's paying attention to. So instead of using a case study of a CEO, I'm just going to use a case study of a celebrity because it's the same thing happening. It's no different in the private sector. It's the same thing. Now, I'm not going to go ice skating with a CEO and then end up at a Dave & Buster's, but but it's the same type of mindset of how you put yourself out there. So in the celebrity world, it shows that they're really no different than the private sector too. They're all trying to figure it out. So
totally. And I think it's like a very Kardashian-esque thing where like part of the fun of the Kardashians is always is knowing when they're doing the manipulation, right?
Yes.
Like that's what real fans of reality shows are into. They're not just into it. They're into, I see what she's doing. They like, people love feeling like that inside, track.
Oh, without a doubt.
And so I think it's like, it is. Anyway, that's what I do. Like in Infamous, basically, I like throw in a little bit of like, okay, Gwyneth, well, I have met her. Let me tell you what I think.
Yes, you do.
So I'm telling the story, but I'm also like, hoping that people come back for those like little stories, right? Like,
I love the little stories.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
it's fun.
I love the little stories.
Yeah.
Okay, Vanessa, thank you so much.
So nice to talk to you. This was so much fun.
Yes.
Oh my God, this was like by far the highlight of the week.
Oh my gosh,
Such
let
a
me
hard,
stop for a
horrible
moment.
week.